Hello, I'm David Kiley, or DK. Welcome to the Wheel Print Podcast, presented to you by Performax, that puts the soul into the design of your custom sport or everyday wheelchair. As host of the Wheel Print Podcast, I will engage with my guests to uncover the power of their human spirit in their achievements or in their struggle. So kick back and enjoy the ride. All right, here we are. Wheel Print Performax Nation. This is the Wheel Print Podcast, and I am the host, David Kiley, or DK. Today's guest is a big deal. Oh, yeah. She is something else, and you're going to find out. You know, when you've known somebody for over 50 years, and yet they are one of the most humble people you've ever met, and they're not huge on social media and all the bling. You know, when you dig, you can find your place in the space of being amazed. And so I am really happy to tell you a little bit and introduce you to Susan Hagel. She's a 3-sport Paralympian, basketball, my first love, para archery, and para track and field. She took part in 6 consecutive Paralympic Games starting in 1976, 1980, 84, 88, 92, 96, and winning 4 gold medals and 2 bronze medals. She was a member of Team USA for 25 years.
You did your homework.
And that's why I got really amazed when I dug deeper. Susan spent a career of 41 years as a therapist at the Courage Center in Minnesota. Am I right?
Well, it started off being called Sister Kinney Institute, which was an acute rehab center, and then it joined together with Courage Center, and now the name is Courage Kenny
Okay, that
Rehabilitation.
I knew there was a little nuance in there, so
Yeah,
thanks
yeah,
for clarifying that. But you also graduated from the University of Illinois.
yes.
Yeah, and this is the big daddy that I want to really camp out in, and you know what I want to talk a lot about, but you were just or recently inducted into the United States Olympic and Paralympic Committee Hall of Fame, which is
hmm
taking place in sooner than we can imagine, July 12th in Colorado Springs.
hmm
And there you will enter, in my words, the Hall of Halls. You're the first ever archer to be inducted into the
Yes.
USOPC Hall of Fame. And that's just not sit down wheelchair archery, parasport archery, but that's all
All
archers.
of them. Yeah. I
Yeah.
didn't know
So,
that. So until
yeah.
just recently when I was contacted by the World Archery magazine and
Yeah.
and and
That,
that reporter told me that and I didn't realize that. So that's kind of
yeah. Well,
awesome.
that makes it even a bigger deal,
Mm-hmm.
and you currently give of your time in a volunteer mode for serving on the Hall of Fame committee for the National Wheelchair Basketball Association. And, you know, it's my honor to welcome you to the Wheel Print Podcast, Susan Hagel.
Well, well, thank you. So my pleasure to be here.
There's probably a how, when, and where your story began. When did you begin this journey that we've just kind of captured in the first 5 minutes? And it's certainly a much greater story than that. What led up to your injury, and how did you get involved?
Okay. How my road journey went. So yes, I was injured in a car accident. It was a single car accident. Um, And that was when I was a teenager. So it was 1968. So it was back in the olden days. And um, and I and I grew up in a small town in Wisconsin. So unfortunately, I was like the only spinal cord injured person in the whole community. So and went through school and didn't really know anyone else. And at that time, it was very difficult to find a college that was accessible. And and it was just by luck. Um, in fact, I was denied going to PE class, because I had a disability. So they sent me to the guidance counselor's office, and I was unloading the mail, and there was a catalog back when things were done in paper for the University of Illinois. And there was a whole section in there about how it's wheelchair accessible and everything. Because I didn't think I was going to be able to go to college because there wasn't any place in Wisconsin for me to go. And so I ended up there, and of course that led me to my career, as a professional and my athletic career because of the opportunities that were presented to me at the University of Illinois.
Well,
Mm-hmm.
and then that leads right into, the acronym DRES. Um,
Mm-hmm.
that if you're in the know, you're from an era or you're an alumni. But maybe some of our listeners don't know what the Division of Rehabilitation Services is about, and maybe its role in your time, your life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the service center was there, and it provided a lot of different things for all the different students. For myself personally, um, I was way late with submitting my application to be a student at the University of Illinois. And so that division of rehab services, was a liaison for me and got me in so I didn't have to wait a whole year to go to college. Um, and they helped me to navigate getting admission into the school and getting into a dorm that was accessible, things like that. So at that time, some of the other things they provided, which was a little bit unconventional, and I don't think they do this anymore, but I didn't have an opportunity to learn how to drive in my high school because they didn't have hand controls or any way for me to be able to drive. And at that time, they had driver's ed because a lot of people like myself and came to college without having had a lot of opportunities like that. So and also for equipment, um, like the medical equipment field that exists now, that wasn't really available back in the early 70s, late 80s. So a lot of that helped me out, just basic, because rehabilitation didn't exist the way it does now, and they really didn't teach me how to do anything for myself when I was in the hospital. So I had to figure it out all on my own. And I think that is why I chose to spend my career being a therapist, because I thought, okay, I had to figure all this stuff out on my own. And if I can help someone else to try to figure out how to navigate life as a wheelchair user, as a person with a spinal cord injury, that's what I wanted to do. And that's why I went in to be a therapist in rehab.
Has the impetus to literally serve others uh, from the gaps that you felt where
Mm-hmm.
you could have some impact. And but
Mm-hmm.
man, Susan, you stayed in it for 41 years.
I did. I did. So hopefully I made a difference to a few people along the way. So
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt. But you must have truly loved what you did.
mm-hmm. I
If
did.
if you didn't, you wouldn't have been there that
No,
long.
yeah.
And
So it was different people every day. So, mm-hmm. Yeah.
well, we're still on the U of I kind of deal. So, uh, were you possibly on the very first U of I women's team?
I was, yes.
Yeah.
When I got to school, when I got to the U of I knew nothing about wheelchair sports. I'd never heard of it. I knew nothing. I didn't know that people did that. No idea. And there was a small group of women there, um, kind of the movers and the shakers, and they wanted to try playing basketball and try to get a women's wheelchair basketball team started and stuff. So the first gal that approached me, they said, "Oh, do you want to come play basketball?" I said, "Oh, I can't. I use a wheelchair, you know." So that's where my head was at to start with. So and I had started to shoot archery. Um, One of the world class archers and one of the premier coaches in wheelchair archery was Jack Whitman, and he was at the U of I, and he was my first coach and taught me all the basics, and helped get me into sports. So I did archery first, and then kind of later on that fall, that winter, that's when the few women that were interested in basketball approached me. So we started playing, and we were pretty darn terrible, let me tell you. And but very determined. And so, yes, I was on the first team from the U of I, and I played in the first game between two women's teams. We played against Southern Illinois University. They pulled together a group of people. So I think our first game was like the score was 4-2 or something, and everybody cheered when anybody made a basket. But it was from those very humble beginnings. From those very humble beginnings, I look at the skill set of uh, girls that start in juniors and then continue as adults and make the USA team, and the skills are just phenomenal now. So,
Yeah.
hmm
Well, everything was relative to those times, to that equipment, to
uh-huh,
those services or lack thereof,
yeah.
and having to forge your own way, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's really cool that we can identify you as one of the first females to play wheelchair basketball in the collegiate
Mm-hmm.
space.
Yeah. Or
And
any space in the United States.
yeah,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
yeah,
So,
and numbers then were minimal. Like you said, there was a team in Southern Illinois,
mm-hmm.
and you know, for women, given my experience, that's always been an issue. But today, with all the junior girls coming up through the junior programs, more and
Mm-hmm.
more teams, was just currently at the national championships in Fort Wayne, Indiana, and there were 17 teams participating. Then
Mm-hmm.
that excludes the collegiate division,
Yeah, I
right?
know.
So there's even more, and yeah, the play is really really high level, and
Mm-hmm.
I've always loved the women's game, and but
Yeah.
you had to have crossed paths and been influenced by our founder Timothy Nugent.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I knew
Tell us
Tim.
about that. That Tim is almost on his own Mount Rushmore by himself.
To meet him, he was a very just confident and an assured man. And also very progressive thinking, obviously, to think about what he did when he started to try to get the University of Illinois accessible so that World War II veterans basically is, what he was advocating for. And to think about the era that he was advocating for accessibility decades before the ADA, and it's just amazing to see somebody have that vision and have that acceptance and to know about the potential that someone who happens to use a wheelchair has, where the general public didn't see that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the fortitude to not accept no, you know,
Mm-hmm.
as a final answer, in my, research and reading and following Tim, he had to fight battles,
Mm-hmm.
not only on campus, but also to get wheelchair basketball accepted and
Mm-hmm.
through the veterans administrations and
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Well,
and
and the legislature too, I think, because, it took a lot of a big movement to try to get a university of that caliber wheelchair accessible,
yeah,
to
no
build
kidding.
ramps or, yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Well, there's quite a man, quite a story. His legend lives in our sport to this day. He's in the Naismith Hall of Fame, and has a nice exhibit crediting his impact. I'm really proud of that. I know you are as
mm-hmm.
well.
Oh yeah. Really feel honored to know him um and to see what one person can do to make an impact. You know,
Yeah,
it's kind of like, Gutman over in England. It
right,
just takes one person to get an entire movement started. So,
right. Well, you talked about you started with archery first,
mm-hmm.
and then it, kind of just morphed into the next activity, which was wheelchair basketball. Uh, so and then I presume the track and field came third.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, what events were you involved in? And
Well, I ended up being on the relay team. They needed um, someone to fill in, and so that's how I got involved in the track events. It wasn't a primary sport, and and back in those days, I always talk about back in those days, but they were my days. But
mine too.
yeah, the to be selected to be on the national team or the Paralympic team at that time, um, and I know as a woman, I don't know about men, you can answer that part. You had to do more, you really did need to do more than one sport. Um, be so that your participation would be able to garner the most medals um, and have the team do the best that it could. And so, the selection was more limited. The teams were much smaller than what they are now. And so you didn't have the luxury of being limited to only needing to do one sport and focus on that. And so, and initially, when we in the United States started to play, have the women's teams and play against each other, and so we were advocating to have a team, to go to the Paralympics. And so in 1980, the USA team managers and, you know, team leaders, whatever, decided, okay, well, we'll see how they can do playing basketball. So we're going to take 4 players dedicated only to women's basketball. The rest of the team was made up of all of us who did other sports, whether it was swimming or track or archery, like myself. And so those sports took priority, and but when you weren't engaging in competing in those sports, then you were on the basketball court. So there were some games where there were the 4 players that were designated just for basketball. And so sometimes I would be there for the first half, someone else would be there for the second half because I had to go off, and because it was my designated practice time or my competition time. And that's how we did. And we ended up finishing 3rd, believe it or not, in that way. And after that competition, then the team leaders and we were recognized that yes, we could be a force to be reckoned with on the world level for women's basketball. So 1984, so was the first year that it was a full basketball team was selected for the Paralympics. So, but at that time, I was still very involved in archery, and I was the one person on the team. I still did dual sports in '84.
Yeah, well, I can understand why.
Yeah.
But yeah, I
So,
can totally identify because I was that guy, a multi-sport guy,
yeah,
and
that's how you started.
in '76, we we'd be playing a game, a basketball, playing against another country, and next thing you know, I'd be sprinting out the back door to get to the track,
Yeah.
and it amazing that we could pull the schedule off in most cases, but it didn't always, I always felt it limited the strength of at least men's basketball teams
Mm-hmm.
because we put together teams not just by you being a basketball player, like you said, there were 4, and then
Mm-hmm.
the others just came because they were there. That
Mm-hmm.
was also our organization maximizing the dollar,
Yes.
that
Yeah.
they didn't have to, they could utilize the athletes that were there, and
We had to
80,
raise our own funds. We had to pay our
yeah,
own way.
yeah,
We had to raise our own funds, and whether you solicited donations or just paid out of pocket, that was how you got to be on the team. And I remember the first year that it was totally paid for. I didn't have to do any fundraising. Boy, was that just felt amazing. It um, kind of validated too, that you were an athlete and a member of a world-class athlete and member of this team.
yeah, yeah. No, and it got old having to raise funds from '76 to 80 '84. You know,
I think that was the first team. Yeah.
yeah. Well, I know for certain Curtis Bell and myself were 2 prime figures in the men's on the men's team, and we sat it out because we were protesting the fact that our organization was not making any moves towards fundraising and just taking the easy road of charging the athlete, and in '84 I was able to secure a $20,000 sponsor for the U.S. basketball teams. Uh, I just wanted to show that I wasn't bitter, and I wasn't just going to try to see the basketball program go up in smoke at the '84 games. And so anyway, it did ultimately change, and it changed slowly. And even today, they're still requiring, under 23. There's so many different teams that are now going, Susan, that require funding, and the NWBA hasn't been able to keep up with it. So,
Mm-hmm.
anyways, funding is always what drives our sport and allows us to do so much. And but look, you know, I recall, 76. You were an archer. You
Correct.
participated, yeah. And I remember you. You know, you know, I could remember you both from doing post ups and in basketball, and you were strong, and then you would just slow your heart rate down as an archer, and
Mm-hmm.
that familiar bowstring on your all's lips,
Mm-hmm.
and just laser focus. And I remember watching you, and that's where you really you establish yourself then, I think. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and then of course your influence of Jack Whitman, your coach, and you dominated for 20 years in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that anybody touched you, you know. uh,
Not
20
for a lot of
years,
years.
20. Yeah, again, I did my research, and I was like, holy cow, man, that's just so powerful. And so you have basketball and archery. It, did you prefer one over the other, or did you just slide into both and love them both?
You know, I've been asked that before, and so I have thought about this answer. And I don't have a favorite from the two. And I think they are so different and diverse, where archery is an individual sport, and you talked about it being, slowing your heart rate and concentrating and and so the focus and the precision of it, um, is one aspect. And then you look at basketball, where it's a team sport, and that whole feeling of accomplishment as a team feels different than accomplishment as an individual. And I know that you can relate to that. And so that feeling is different. And I enjoy the sport of basketball. It's kind of like chess. You have 10 moving parts, 11 if you count the ball. And to see how that all melds together,
Yeah,
and to be able to see the next step, to know, you know, 3, 4 moves down the road, on the floor, what's going to happen. I enjoy that part of the game. I usually was point guard, so you had to think ahead in the play and stuff like that. So I enjoyed that. I, really enjoyed that a lot. And
yeah.
and winning as a team has a very different feeling than winning as an individual. They are both just magnificent. So,
Yeah, I agree totally. Because I was an alpine Paralympian skier, and that's solo, all up here, and all
mm-hmm,
your visualization and memorizing courses, and basketball's, point guard myself, it is wide open, and good players knew that you have to slow down sometimes in order to go fast. But then most of basketball just wants to run wide open.
Mm-hmm.
They don't ever slow down,
Nope.
and
Well,
to me, there's absolutely a place for where it demands both. But um, yeah, so we've got this kindred experience of being triple sport Paralympians, individual, team. Uh,
mm-hmm.
I think it's really cool now, and we also have this unique experience of the United States Olympic and Paralympic Committee Hall of Fame.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I can't tell you what you're gonna feel, um, but I can ask you what it felt like. I'm presuming you got the call, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
presuming it was from Sarah Hirschland. Um, she's the CEO of the uh, United States Olympic and Paralympic Committee. Did what? Tell us what that call was like, and
Well,
and
first
don't
of all,
hold.
it was such an honor to be nominated,
Yeah,
from the get-go. So out of all the people, so that was a tremendous honor just to start with. So, and then when I got the call, it was, um, and then I had to keep it a secret for a couple days. So before the big announcement, whatever. But so that was truly, truly exciting. It's hard to put into words what an honor this is. So, and I retired from competitive sports over 25 years ago, and you just don't expect,
right.
something that far in your rear view mirror to, be acknowledged today and to be honored today. And so I think, um, and I'm very excited about, the event and the ceremony. So I have to. So do you have any advice for me since you were there last year being honored?
Oh well, I was there in 22. That was the last induction class.
Oh,
Um,
20.
yeah,
Oh,
22,
oh, 22 it
20.
was. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Duh.
so they try to do it every 2 years, and but yet sometimes it doesn't happen that way.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm gonna be there for your induction. My wife and I, they're bringing us in, and that in itself is an
Ooh,
honor. Yeah,
wow.
so I'll get to witness your induction along with the other two Paralympians, Marla Runyon and the Steve Cash, the sled hockey.
Mm-hmm.
Marla Runyon is track, and
Yeah.
then the 2004 women's
Basketball
Paralympic team
team. Mm-hmm.
also going in. But man, this is where it's at for me. When we cross into the respect and recognition of the Olympic movement,
Mm-hmm.
there, I get goosebumps just saying that out loud. And you're going in with Serena Williams,
Mm-hmm.
Gabby Douglas from gymnastics, Allison Felix from track, Kerri Walsh from beach volleyball. She was one of the most watched Olympians ever. Her and Misty May were winning championships and gold
Mm-hmm.
medals. Bode Miller, the alpine skier. The
Mm-hmm.
names are endless, and then you have the 2010 bobsled team. Uh, you've got legends. Anita DeFrance was like a version of you who not only participated in Paralympics, she was the first black woman to receive a gold medal in rowing. But then she carried on the movement, you know, uh, after her Olympic days, and so and then there's a whole laundry list of like I'm going there, but then all these other Olympians that have been uh, inducted in the past are all going to be there, So it's like a
Mm,
who's who, and you're just going
yeah.
to be like a kid in a candy store, and then Susan, you're going to see a kiosk that is got you that in the museum,
Mm-hmm.
and you're going to see your banners on the street. Uh,
Really? Wow.
no, there's no. It's absolutely. It is everything.
Wow.
Uh, and y- y- and I didn't even mention the coaches or like Mike Krzyzewski from Duke,
Mm-hmm.
Phil Knight, who was the founder of Nike, um, all getting recognized alongside of you.
I know it
So
is really amazing to think about who I'm, sharing this with across the board. It's just astonishing. And, to think about those first years when we were in sports, maybe we got honorable mention on the social page of the newspaper back,
maybe,
maybe, and to be recognized as an athlete now and to be equal with the Olympians and as a Paralympian, it's really sometimes it's mind-boggling to think of what's changed and what's happened during my lifetime. So, you
yeah,
know,
I
hmm
agree. Our lifetime and the
yeah.
collective, uh, the collective movement of where we started and where we're at. And now, that acronym has Paralympians in it forever,
hmm
and the museum you will be in and forever.
Yeah.
You and your accomplishments will be on the wall, on kiosk. Uh, y- yeah, you're just going to get your mind blown, So just be ready for
Wow. Okay,
that.
I'll be ready.
Yeah, it's so special. It
I don't think I don't know how I can be ready or prepared, even, because just
no,
what you're saying is just
just
astonishing to me. So,
yeah. Well, just let it happen. It it will be for you. It'll be yours, and it can be any way you want it to be. But man, it to
hmm
me, I had the same feelings. One, I had to temper that nomination. I was like, man, well, it's really cool to get nominated, but I don't want to get too far out in front of myself because I don't want to be disappointed or
hmm
I
hmm
want to show respect to those that would get it. But then when you get the call, and yeah, I had to keep a secret, but man, I danced around the house for hours with the wife. I was so excited. Um, yeah, and I really believe in the the committee, and what they do related to inclusion.
hmm
All things can get better, but
Yeah.
man, when you have you been in the museum yet?
No, uh-uh.
Yeah,
I
wait
mailed
till
a whole bunch of memorabilia to contribute to the museum. I did that during COVID when I was here. I went through all of my memorabilia and I sent quite a few things to the museum. So
yeah,
we'll see if some of my stuff is in there.
yeah. Well, I think it should be because they were requesting artifacts. I sent because it was so historical. I sent my '88 gold medal um, because that's when the United States Olympic Committee took us under their umbrella,
Mm-hmm.
and when we first did and we're in the same venues, and the
Mm-hmm.
100,000 people in opening ceremonies,
Mm-hmm.
So it was historical, and I thought it was a great place to give my medal and have life,
Mm-hmm.
for that time. But another testimony to their vision of inclusion and showing equity to the para athlete. What would you wish for young girls? If you were one
Mm.
of them right now, or you were able to
Yeah.
make that change.
So I know that's sometimes, I've been called a pioneer, and and I and at times that seems kind of, I don't know. Well, it makes me old, but of course I am old, so there we go. But I'm very proud of what I did as a pioneer to create opportunities for young girls and other women. And I think, you know, one of the messages is, you know, someone was before you in order to create this opportunity, in order to try to get recognition, in order to improve and advance training or equipment or something. And I just really encourage people to do what you can to try to provide opportunities for others. So, and to mentor people, help them along. So, mhm.
Yeah,
I guess I think that's my message. So to to be a giving person and to help someone else.
yeah. As you continue to be, as referenced by your involvement and service to the great sport of wheelchair basketball and its history, its Hall of Fame, 41 years in terms of service in the therapeutic modalities that you found yourself in. So yeah, the world's a better place because of your wheel print on the sport, Susan Hagel, and
Oh, well, thank you.
I just want to tell you what an honor it is to have you on the Wheel Print podcast, and I'm going to let all of our listeners know that we are on. You can find us on our YouTube channel, on Spotify, on Apple podcasts, and this. And I want to thank the listeners for being able to hear this woman's story. And again, it's only a snippet of it, but the powerful example that she may serve to you. So, anyways, this is an over and out segment of the Wheel Print podcast. Susan Hagel, peace to
Hmm.
you
Yep.
until we
Thank you. Thanks
meet
for
again.
having me. So,
Yeah, you're more than welcome. All right. I know you enjoyed today's guest on the Wheel Print podcast, and thank you for listening. I invite you to check out all our episodes on Apple Podcasts and Spotify and on our YouTube channel. Thank you to our presenting sponsor, Performax Wheelchairs, the Sweet Ride. 25 years of excellence and experience. Choose Performax and never be let down. Follow us on Instagram at DK3_Soul of the Game.